Imagine a war with no rules, where the deadliest enemies aren't soldiers, but the forest and the frost, and where heroes become ghosts. This is the story of Rogers Rangers, an elite unit that struck fear into their enemies and forever changed the rules of warfare. Quote, Robert Rogers. The best way to find the enemy is to make him reveal himself. Who is he and why does it matter? In the mid-18th century, North America became a battlefield between two giants, Britain and France. But this war wasn't won in grand palaces. It was won in the endless forests, where the wild dictated the rules. And from the cold north they emerged, Rogers Rangers. Robert Rogers essentially created the first true commando unit in the British Empire by adapting Native American tactics to European-style warfare. Why were they special? They were nothing like regular soldiers. All army regulations were forgotten. Rogers taught them to survive, to camouflage, to fight in loose formation, like true hunters. They moved silently, lived in the forest like wild animals. And their weapons were not only muskets, but also cunning, ambushes, and surprise attacks. Here are just a few of Rogers' unwritten rules. Rogers' rules. Don't stand in the open, run for cover. Attack unexpectedly with noise and shouting. Never return by the same route. If pursued by the enemy, split into small groups and circle around him. Little known fact, Rogers' men used tomahawks in battle. These men looked like savages, their faces smeared with soot and dirt, and their clothes were torn. But no soldier of the Royal Army could match them in the forest. Their boldest operation was the raid on St. Francis in 1759. It was a retaliatory strike for attacks on British settlements. They marched over 200 miles through enemy territory, swamps and forests, often without food. At night, they reached the village, launched a surprise attack, and completely destroyed it. On the way back, they were pursued. Many Rangers died from hunger in the relentless chase, but Rogers and some of his men miraculously survived. Memoir of a raid participant, Jeremy Friel, Ranger. We ate tree bark to survive. Every step was torture, but the thought of revenge warmed us more than any fire. 5 days without rest. The swamps pulled us in up to our knees. Hunger gnawed at our stomachs, and French trackers were breathing down our necks. But we remembered the massacre at Fort William Henry. And when we recalled the smoke rising over St. Francis, the exhaustion vanished like a mirage. Few people know, but during one of the raids, Rogers Rangers captured enemy positions that were considered impregnable, simply because the enemy did not expect an attack through the impenetrable forest. Few people know, but Rogers Rangers, during the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, were formed mostly from experienced frontiersmen and hunters of European descent from the British colonies. But they actively adopted and adapted Native American methods of warfare. At times, allied Native Americans, such as the Mohicans, also joined their ranks, though they did not make up the majority of the unit. Although Native Americans were not the first Rangers in the sense of forming colonial military units, their combat traditions and deep knowledge of the land were the foundation and inspiration for the emergence and success of all later Ranger formations. Legacy and influence, what did they leave behind? Although the French and Indian War ended in a British victory, Rogers Rangers left behind more than just battlefield successes. They changed the face of warfare in the New World. Little known fact, Rogers' tactics became the foundation for training scouts and rangers during the American Revolutionary War, and later influenced many special forces units around the world. His rules were studied even in the 20th century. Quote about Rogers, General Jeffrey Amherst, British commander. Rogers is the best of all men at forest warfare. Lesser known fact, Robert Rogers himself, after the War of Independence, had a difficult fate. He was accused of treason. He had served the British for a time, which reflects the complexity of that era. Final thoughts on what's next. The story of Rogers Rangers is one of survival, courage, and revolutionary change in the art of war. They were the ghosts of the forests who forever changed the rules of the game. Their legacy lives on to this day. What do you think about their methods? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.